We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Sunday night edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. I'll say this, mid-December, I know a lot of other pods and YouTube channels are slowing down. Not Torres. I am full speed ahead. This is as jam-packed of a December show as I can ever remember. By the way, people, it is game week. We will talk some college football playoff throughout the week. But today we got to react to a wild weekend across college sports. We'll open. Travis Hunter wins the Heisman Trophy. Not surprising, but I do think there is a twist that not a lot of people are talking about. We will hit the college football transfer portal. Big weekends at Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss. By the way, Ole Miss basically is just taking whoever they want off the Arkansas roster. We'll discuss all that. Also, one of Bill Belichick's lieutenants coming out hot, has a lot to say about another program in the ACC. I'll tell you that story. It's kind of wild. From there, we will take a quick break, talk some college hoops, why the SEC might just be trending to be one of the greatest leagues in the history of college basketball that we have ever seen. And then we will wrap with a look at a busy Saturday across college basketball. UConn beats Gonzaga. Talks of their demise have been greatly exaggerated. Kentucky beats Louisville. Lamont Butler, friend of the Aaron Torres pod, with an unbelievable historic night. Tennessee at the buzzer. UCLA over Arizona. There is a lot to get into. Before we get started, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every day on YouTube. We have hit 48,000 subscribers on YouTube. I want to get to 50K before 2025. Can we make that happen, people? Tell a friend, share, tell them about Torres. Appreciate everybody's support. Also, make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You want to do your boy Torres a solid, leave a 5-star rating, leave a review. Tell him how awesome Torres is, the content that I deliver on a daily basis. But really do appreciate everybody's support as the numbers just continue to be absolutely astronomical. Cannot thank everybody. Also, before we get started, you know what I got to do? I got to thank our friends. I got to thank our partners. I got to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so it's the holiday season, but it's also kind of a time that you relax, right? You're sitting on the couch more. You have friends over. You have family over. You're watching football. Maybe there's some bowl games during the week when you're not working. You need something healthy but delicious to eat so that you don't enter 2025 as a completely fat slob and gross and disgusting, let's be honest. That's where Collie Puffs comes in. Collie Puffs is the new alternative, healthy but delicious snack. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, but they taste delicious. Family-owned company. Joey, he lives not far from me. He is a father. He is a football fan. He's a season ticket holder, and he's no different than you and me. He was sitting on the couch one day. He was snacking. He said, there has to be something healthy for me to eat that also tastes delicious, that my kids will like, that I will like. He created Collie Puffs. So listen, at this point, I've been telling you about them for months. You don't have to take my word for it. Try them for yourself. It's the holidays. Do Torres a solid. Do yourself a solid. And visit ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com. Or, and I keep saying it, you can get these bad boys on Amazon. Okay, go to Amazon. You're ordering gifts for friends, for family, for whatever. Throw in some Collie Puffs. They are available on Amazon. Just throw them in your cart. Just a bag or two. Just try them. You'll like them. Tell them Torres sent you. Appreciate your support. And we appreciate Collie Puff's support of the Aaron Torres Pod. With that said, woo, buddy, it is Sunday. It is mid-December. We are 10 days away from Christmas. Well, here is my gift to you. A loaded Sunday night, Monday show. There is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, let's talk a little bit of Heisman, okay? So listen, I don't think we have to spend 25 minutes breaking down the Heisman Trophy ceremony. I think for about the last 3, 4, 5 weeks, it has felt like it was trending towards Travis Hunter. And on Saturday, it becomes official. Travis Hunter does, in fact, win the Heisman Trophy. I got a lot of thoughts, but kind of where I want to end up. I want to just go through all of them. I do think there is an element of Travis Hunter winning the Heisman that we are not talking about enough, and that is the role that Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, really played to get him to this point. I think we're understating really the role that Deion Sanders played. I don't think people remember exactly how this went down. We're going to get there in a minute, but before we do, let's talk about the Heisman ceremony. Saturday night, listen, I'll say this. I think the whole presentation is a little bit too long. We don't need an hour. I think most of you are like me. You probably tune in for the last 10 minutes just to see who wins. But I'll say this. You watched it. It's hard not to like Travis Hunter. I mean, just sweet, sincere. One, he's a great football player. That goes without saying. But if you watch the Heisman ceremony, it was such an awesome speech. It was off the cuff. It wasn't super scripted. And by the way, I'm not going to blame previous winners for kind of having a scripted, 19, 20, 21 years old in front of a national audience. But it just was so sincere. It was so sweet. He thanked his father. He thanked his mother. He gave a quick Lil Wayne was there. I don't know if you guys saw this. The funniest part, he said, Lil Wayne, appreciate you. Didn't really know your music until my fiance put me onto you, but thank you for being here. And I like your music now that I've tried it out. So it was a great ceremony. And I'll be transparent. I thought the most interesting thing was actually how close the Heisman ceremony was. By the way, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, thank you, producer Matt, for the reminder. Make sure if you're a Colorado fan, you're following our Torres on CU account on Twitter, Torres on CU, for all late breaking Colorado football news. But to get back to Travis Hunter, to get back to the Heisman, I think the biggest thing, it was actually a little bit closer than I expected. Travis Hunter with 552 first place votes, 2,231 total points. Ashton Jeanty, 309 first place votes, a total of 2,017 points. And so this was actually the closest Heisman ceremony, Heisman result since 2009. Can you remember off the top of your head who finished first and second? How about this? Mark Ingram, now working at Fox. Toby Gerhart from Stanford. So, yeah, this was the closest one we've had in 15 years. Now, in terms of did the committee get it right, I'll be honest. Look, I don't have a Heisman vote, but to me, this was almost a no-brainer. To me, it had to be Travis Hunter. And it sucks because whenever you say Travis Hunter deserves it, it feels like you're kind of trying to tear down the other candidates. I'm not doing that. Ashton Jeanty had just an unbelievable, phenomenal year. 2,400 yards rushing is just insane. And I don't want to take away anything from what he did or anything that he, is going to do in the future, whatever. But at the same time, let's put aside Ashton Jeanty and let's just talk about Travis Hunter. First of all, the stats were insane, okay? Because I think sometimes we get lost in the shuffle of like, well, he's a two-way player. Well, he's this. Well, he's that. Yeah, but he had the stats to back it up, okay? 92 catches, over 1,100 yards receiving, closer to 1,200 yards actually, 14 receiving touchdowns. Keep in mind, by the way, that was a Colorado record that was that led the Big 12. And he had 4 interceptions in a year where they basically didn't throw the ball to his side of the field. So the stats were there. And again, I just don't think you can fully appreciate what this kid did. And, I saw a lot of well, he's not this and he's not that. It's like, listen, if it was so easy to do what Travis Hunter did, somebody else would have done it by this point, and nobody else has ever in the history of college football, or at least in the last 100 years. Maybe back in 1927, somebody at Army had a season like this, or Notre Dame, or whatever. What I'm saying is in the modern era, we have never seen anything close to this. I threw out the stat a few weeks ago. Some people, again, thought I was criticizing another Heisman winner. But we nostalgize, we get so nostalgic about that Charles Woodson Heisman Trophy season. Here's the bottom line. I'm not trying to tear down Charles Woodson's accomplishments. Charles Woodson, do you know in that Heisman season that we remember as the most incredible thing ever, best cornerback, and he played wide receiver, and he returned kicks, and he returned punts. Charles Woodson had 11 total catches that season. Travis Hunter had multiple games where he had 11 plus receptions in a game. Charles Woodson had 11 in a season. I know he returned kicks. I know he returned punts. I know it's different, and I'm not trying to tear him down. What I am saying is if everyone could do what Travis Hunter did, we would have seen it before. Nobody can. I don't think it will ever happen again. And I don't think we fully appreciate just how hard what he did truly was. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, don't take my word for it. Don't take Torres' word. Listen, I played a little high school football back in the day. I used to knock some heads. I didn't play in the league, though. I didn't play major college football. But I bring it up because we had someone on the show a few weeks ago who did. So Damian Lewis is the Colorado defensive line coach, okay? Damian Lewis, for people who don't know his background, as accomplished of a football player as he can be, All-American at Miami. Not only was he an All-American, he played with Ed Reed. He played with Santana Moss. He played with Reggie Wayne. He played with, name the player, Andre Johnson, Clinton Portis, whatever. We had Damian Lewis on. Damian Lewis not only played at Miami, not only was an All-American, but played in the NFL and was a first-round NFL draft pick. I asked him, what is it like to watch Travis Hunter every single day at practice? I thought he gave a great answer. Here's what he had to say. As somebody who gets to see it every day, are you amazed by what Travis does on a day-to-day basis?
I love his approach. Like, he has the right approach to the game. He comes in every day. He's thrilled to be here, whether it's the off season or during the season. He works extremely hard. He knows what he has to do to get his body prepared to take on the vigorous work that he has to do, because he's playing, 50 snaps on offense and 60 snaps on defense, whatever it may be. So he's playing well over 100 snaps a game. That takes a different human to do that. So to sit back and watch him play the way that he plays and prepare the way that he prepares, because it's the same thing in practice. When he go to practice, he's on offense. And then when we go ones on defense, he's on defense. Like, it's no break. He'll get a swig of water and he's ready to go. So just seeing how his approach is and how tough he is about it and his mindset about it, it's really cool to see a young man have that type of maturity and approach to the day-to-day work that he has.
There you have it. Don't take my word for it. Take it from somebody who played in the NFL, was a first-round pick, and now watches it every day. I think it's incredible. And I think what Damian Lewis said is important. It's not just the games, it's practice. It's that he's not only in receiver meeting rooms. It's not that he's only in defensive back meeting rooms. It's not that he's only playing defense in practice and then immediately goes and kind of takes a break when the one's on. No, he goes and practices with the ones on offense. So it is incredible. I believe he's the deserving winner. No disrespect to Ashton Genty. Really quick, though, I do want to talk about something that I don't think is appreciated enough in what Travis Hunter did over the last couple months. And that is the role that Coach Prime Deion Sanders played in not necessarily once he got to college, putting him in position to do what he did. That's part of it for sure. But also essentially being the only coach in college football that believed he could even do it. And I go back to that recruitment. We all remember where we were. What was it? December 2021, I think probably would have been the right time frame if my math is correct. Travis Hunter's committed to Florida State. You hear all the recruiting people talk about it. They're checking in. Is he going to flip? Could he go anywhere else? You don't really hear anything. You think he's going to go to Florida State. Then all of a sudden, listen, I'm on social media as much as anybody. You see the rumors. Oh my goodness. He might go to Jackson State. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime may flip him. And so I bring it up because we all remember that day, but I think we forget a lot of the context around it. Why did Travis Hunter flip to play for Jackson State and flip to play for Deion Sanders? And then why did he travel? Why did he go with Coach Prime to Colorado? Well, there were a lot of reasons. One, obviously, we can all tell, got an unbelievable relationship with Coach Prime. He even said at the Heisman ceremony, hey, man, I'll see you on the lake tomorrow. We're fishing. I'm winning, etc. So he obviously sees Coach Prime as a father figure. At the time, I think he wanted to play for an HBCU, do something that had never been done before. But also, there is another element that we all forget. Part of the reason that he chose to play for Coach Prime, part of the reason that he chose to go to Jackson State was because Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, was the only one that believed that he could actually do this. You can go back. And again, there's a lot of revisionist history. When I tweeted it out, producer Matt, if you have the tweet, I think I sent it to you. You could pop it up. If not, it's no big deal. This is what I tweeted after Travis Hunter won the Heisman ceremony. Great freaking graphic on the screen, by the way, Matt. I said, thank you to Deion Sanders for being the only coach who allowed and believed Travis Hunter could play both offense and defense at an All-American level. Travis is special, but it was Deion Sanders' belief in him that allowed us all to see a truly historic season. And so again, when I put that out, of course, I got the pushback of other coaches would have let him do that. Why do you think? No. That's part of the reason he went to play for Coach Prime in the first place. It was because he basically said, I believe in you. I believe you can do this. And by the way, a couple things. One, this isn't a knock and say that Travis Hunter isn't special. I don't want it to sound like I'm giving Coach Prime all the credit and whatever. He's obviously an incredible football player. But two, go back to the recruitment. If you go back to the recruitment, there were a lot of great schools. And by the way, he might have developed into a first-round cornerback, almost certainly would have, at Georgia, at Florida State where he was committed, at Alabama, whatever. And it would have been great, and it would have been cool, and he would have been an All-American, and he would have been a top 5 pick, and it would have been great, and he would have won this award, whatever. But we would not have seen a historic season, the historic season that we just saw, if it wasn't for Deion Sanders and it wasn't for believing that Travis Hunter could do what he did, which is not only play corner at a high level, not only play wide receiver at an elite level, but allow him to do both. And so bottom line, I'll just say this. Travis Hunter, congratulations on an incredible season. No doubt what you did. Like I said, it's never going to be done again. Everyone's, anyone could have done that if they got, no. You can't. And so credit to Travis Hunter, but also credit to Coach Prime. Coach Prime believed. Coach Prime said, here's the bottom line. If you come in, if you do what I say, if you believe in me, I am going to believe in you as well. It sounds like a movie, but belief is a powerful drug, and it is so cool to see Travis Hunter not only reach his potential, but reach his potential in part because Coach Prime was the only coach in college football that truly believed that he could play both sides of the football. And when I say both sides, I don't mean like the Charles Woodson play a snap or two on offense. I'm talking about play consistently, essentially every snap, every game, et cetera, on both sides and not miss a beat. Travis Hunter, incredible season, but thank you to Coach Prime for allowing us to see it all. All right, so what we're going to do, take a quick break, come back. When we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about the college football transfer portal. It was insane over the course of this weekend. SEC schools are just loading up left and right. So we'll talk about that. We will talk also Belichick, one of his assistants, kind of sort of calling out one of the main programs in college football, a college football power. Take a quick break, come back, discuss all that. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Deion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy was not the only big story across college football over the course of the weekend. Because I'll tell you what, last Monday, the college football transfer portal opened, and it was insane over the course of the weekend. We knew it was going to be a big weekend for a few reasons. First of all, I think we always underestimate how quickly stuff happens once the portal opens. Bottom line is most of these kids know they're going to transfer. You know, they all have agents now. They're doing the back channel work to kind of figure out, okay, who's interested, who would be interested, et cetera, et cetera. And then 2, spots just fill up quick. LSU's taking one quarterback. Auburn's taking one quarterback. It's go time, and you got to take advantage. If the school that you like wants you, you got to jump in when you can. So we had a crazy, crazy, crazy weekend of college football portal news, especially, I should mention, by the way, it was the first weekend of visits in the portal, right? We all know that, visits mostly happen on the weekend. And so this was the first big visit weekend. And so let's dive into some of the big news. Quick reminder, as always, we do have our CFB transfers pages on both Twitter and Instagram, at CFB transfers on Twitter and Instagram for all of your late breaking portal news. CFB transfers Instagram, CFB transfers on Twitter as well. Let's go ahead and start with what I believe is the biggest news of the weekend. Producer Matt's Auburn Tigers, baby. That is right. The freeze warning has hit the plains because I thought it was a very big, very important weekend for the Auburn Tigers. The big news, of course, comes Saturday morning. Jackson Arnold, the former Oklahoma quarterback, does end up committing to Auburn. Couple really interesting thoughts here when it comes to this recruitment. First of all, look, we know that things did not go well for Jackson Arnold this year. Started the season, got benched, etc. Finishes with 1,400 passing yards, 444 rushing yards, 15 total touchdowns. But the bottom line is, I don't think people realize quite how dire the situation was at Oklahoma on offense. Okay, I am a Jackson Arnold truther. I believe that he just got such a raw deal. And then, by the way, when things went sideways, he was the one who took all the blame. First of all, Oklahoma, 5 new starters on the offensive line. Oh, we all knew that could be a potential problem. But what I don't think people realize is just how many injuries there were on the Oklahoma offensive line, or in the wide receiver room at Oklahoma. Okay. So I went back and looked it up. These numbers are insane. And by the way, a lot of these guys are hitting the portal from Oklahoma, but that wide receiver room was as banged up as anybody's in college football. I'm just going to read you some stats that I think are going to be stunning to you when you actually hear them, okay? So Oklahoma last year, in 2023, they win 10 games. Dillon Gabriel's their quarterback, okay? Here were some of their best wide receivers who returned this year. Nick Anderson, who's actually currently in the portal, was a freshman All-American in 2023, had 38 catches, 10 touchdowns. You know how many catches Nick Anderson had this year because of injury? 0. So a guy that caught 10 touchdowns as a freshman last year has 0 total catches as a sophomore this year, takes a red shirt, is going to transfer, and who knows where he's going to end up. Jaleel Farouk in 2023 had 45 catches. He had 3 in 2024 because of injury. Andrell Anthony had 25 catches in 2023. He had 1 in 2024. Okay. So you go 3 guys that basically had over 100 catches collectively, combined for 4 this season. That is what Jackson Arnold was dealing with. And that's why I am a Jackson Arnold truther. I believe in him. I'm glad. And by the way, we talked about Auburn a lot on the college football betting show and this show all fall long. Listen, I don't think they're that far off. They finished 5-7. They beat A&M. We all saw that game. But remember, they were in control against Oklahoma. They had Oklahoma beat until Peyton Thorne threw a pick 6 late in the fourth quarter. They had Missouri beat. They were up double digits going into the fourth quarter. Don't win that game. And so that Auburn team, I'm not sitting here saying they should have been 10-2 and in the college football playoff conversation, but they weren't that far off. And it is also worth noting, by the way, with Auburn, I think this is sort of important as well. Most of the best talent on that roster is super young. It was funny. Producer Matt and I were talking after the show on Thursday. The freshman all SEC teams came out. Auburn had like 6 guys on the freshman all SEC team. Jay Crawford, DeMarcus Riddick, and oh, by the way, Cam Coleman, who is as freaky of a receiver as it gets. So Auburn has a lot of young talent. They needed that bridge quarterback. We think that Deuce Knight, the 5-star, is the future. It is interesting because we thought the bridge quarterback might be a kid. Producer Matt, is it Walker White is the name? Is that the name of the kid that we thought was going to be the guy and then transferred? That was kind of a funny story because Auburn did put out a graphic. Quarterback room is loaded with Deuce Knight, the 5-star, with Jackson Arnold, and with Walker White. Then, of course, Walker White hit the portal a few hours later. But listen, I actually really do like Jackson Arnold. By the way, you feel bad for Mississippi State. We'll get to them in a second because early in the portal cycle, it felt like Jackson Arnold was going to end up there. He, of course, remember, played under Jeff Lebby, the head coach. And you thought it was going to end up being Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby goes to Mississippi State as the head coach. Jackson Arnold hits the portal. You think it's going to be Mississippi State. Instead, he goes to Auburn. By the way, little historical note. Remember the last time Auburn had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback out of the transfer portal? Chose Auburn over Mississippi State. Is Jackson Arnold Cam Newton 2.0? Okay, I'm being a little sarcastic here, but the point is, history is repeating itself. Jackson Arnold, I am a believer. By the way, you got a nice little piece to join him on Saturday afternoon. And this one tugs at my heartstrings a little bit. Darrell Robinson from the University of Connecticut. Listen, we haven't talked enough about UConn. Jim Mora, 8 wins this season. By the way, you know who they're playing in their bowl game? How about the North Carolina Tar Heels? Bill Belichick coming back to college, the first game of the Bill Belichick era, even though he will probably be at the game, but not on the sidelines. It is against the UConn Huskies, but I bring it up because Darrell Robinson, they really had a two-headed monster. Darrell Robinson, Cam Edwards, both guys rushed for about 750, 760 yards. Cam Edwards had 7 touchdowns. Darrell Robinson had 8. Darrell Robinson averaged 7 yards per carry. Well, Darrell Robinson hits the portal, and he ends up at Auburn. Listen, I just think it's one of those underrated moves that is really going to pay dividends for Auburn. Like we said, the receiver room is stacked. Obviously, the running back room needs some reinforcements, with some of the guys that they're losing after this season. But I'm just here to say, you got to feel really good if you're an Auburn fan. By the way, apparently, as we're recording here, Auburn has landed Xavier Chaplin from Virginia Tech, an offensive tackle. So listen, I don't know the depth chart as well as producer Matt, but you talk to people who know Auburn well. They said, look, all these, pieces are great. Jackson Arnold, Darrell Robinson, you need to upgrade the offensive line. This is the first step, Xavier Chaplin. And I'm telling you this, man, again, I haven't looked at all the schedules and broken it all down. I know Auburn's obviously going to have a tough road schedule. They'll play next year at Oklahoma, at whoever. But you talk about a team that if they get competent quarterback play could make a big leap. I think Auburn's won. They're 5-7, easily could have won 3-4 more games. So Auburn gets a big weekend. Jackson Arnold, Darrell Robinson, and Xavier Chaplin from Virginia Tech on the O-line. Let's keep it going. And let me say this. Talks of Brian Kelly's demise maybe a little bit exaggerated because LSU quietly had a monstrous weekend in the college football transfer portal. Listen, I'll give Brian Kelly this, and we talked about it when the portal opened, okay? Because when the portal opened, the big story at LSU was you don't have Bryce Underwood. Bryce Underwood was the 5-star, number 1 player in America, flips to Michigan. And the big question was, what were you going to do next? Now, as I said at the time, there was thought that Darian Mensah, the transfer from Tulane, right down the road from Baton Rouge, I've done the drive from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. It's 25, 30 minutes. But there was thought that Darian Mensah was going to end up at LSU. He instead goes to Duke. But I bring it up because I actually like what Brian Kelly did. So Michael Van Buren ended up being the starting quarterback at Mississippi State for most of the year. As a true freshman, he was the number 1 recruit in their 2024 class. He comes in to back up Blake Shapen. Blake Shapen gets hurt pretty early on in the process. This kid, Michael Van Buren, gets thrown into the fire. Now, I actually feel bad for Mississippi State because I think the kid entered the portal because it was so obvious that they were recruiting Jackson Arnold to replace him. They don't get Jackson Arnold. This kid ends up in the portal, and now he's at LSU. Why is that noteworthy? It is because Garrett Nussmeier is also coming back. That, to me, is significant because you have your 4th, 5th year guy in Garrett Nussmeier next season, but you also, and I think this is important, you have that quarterback right behind him that has already played in the SEC. And in the perfect world, Michael Van Buren doesn't have to play much. It's almost next year becomes the redshirt year that he should have had this year, but instead it doesn't work out. Now you have a veteran of the SEC to back up Garrett Nussmeier, and you are set at the quarterback position for 3-4 years to come if everything works out well. So Michael Van Buren from Mississippi State commits. Also, as you can see on the screen, Barian Brown. This is a big name, and I know a lot of listeners of this show know the name Barian Brown. Was one of the highest rated commits in the history of Kentucky football, was a wide receiver, former top 100 recruit, had offers from everywhere, goes to Kentucky. By the way, as a true freshman, played with Will Levis. And by the way, I know Will Levis is just taking monster strays right now after the game and the season he's had with the Titans. But as a true freshman, 50 catches 3 seasons ago, 43 catches last year. The numbers this year completely fall off a cliff as Kentucky's pass game falls apart. I think Barian Brown's a monster. I think he is an NFL-type wide receiver. And so LSU now has a reinforcement at wide receiver. They lost C.J. Daniels to the portal. Kyron Lacy's going to go pro. This is a big one. This is a good one for LSU. Also add Jakeem Jackson from Florida in the defensive back room. And I would add this too, and I think this is kind of an important one from the LSU perspective. Jamari Butler. Okay, so Jamari Butler, Nebraska had a top 20 defense. Well, Jamari Butler was one of their best players. Finished this season 7.5 TFLs, 2 sacks. One of my big complaints all season long with LSU. Do they have the guys on the defensive line? They just haven't had the dudes that you need. Well, this kid is going to be a difference maker. Good for LSU for closing the deal. Remember, Nebraska's defensive coordinator goes to Florida State. There was a lot of thought this kid was going to follow him. Not so much. Really quickly, the other big note out of the portal on Sunday, or over the weekend, I should say. And by the way, we're recording. It's about 7:30 Eastern time. So don't yell at me if news breaks right after we get off air. But there was big news at Ole Miss where basically they're just recruiting off the Arkansas roster right now. Okay, and I know there's a lot of Arkansas fans that listen to this show. You know, my buddy John Neighbors, who I love, he was joking on Twitter, like, I think there's a mole inside our facility that's letting Lane Kiffin know who wants to enter the portal, because over the course of the weekend, Friday and Saturday, 3 different Arkansas Razorbacks ended up committing to Ole Miss. And by the way, there's a bigger picture conversation about, I never thought you had to bring Sam Pittman back. I think morale in the program is low. He needed major surgery. He's literally physically not capable of doing the job right now. Well, it's costing him because some of their best players are in the portal. A couple of the names that went from Arkansas to Ole Miss, Patrick Kudus, many believe is one of the best offensive linemen in the portal. And what's noteworthy about this was a kid that took a red shirt after 4 games this year. And I don't know all of the details of the story, but basically promised the Arkansas coaching staff, I will be back in 2025, but let me take my red shirt right now. Takes his red shirt, dips, ends up at Ole Miss. Oh, by the way, defensive back Jalen Braxton ends up at Ole Miss. Luke Haas ends up at Ole Miss. He was a player that was very highly coveted, was supposed to take a trip to Alabama. 26 catches this past season, 3 touchdowns. He hits the portal. Ole Miss gets their guys. And man, oh man, oh man. I just, if you're an Arkansas fan, you got to be frustrated because Ole Miss just basically hijacked your entire roster, or at least the guys that you wanted anyway. So that was the big news from the portal. Again, we'll be covering this stuff over the course of December. There's more big news to come. I think as the college football playoff ramps up, you know, as teams lose next week, and I think players are going to hit the portal, whether it's Texas, Ohio State, whoever ends up losing, Tennessee, guys are going to hit the portal. By the way, we all saw the Quinn Ewers buzz over the course of the last few days, so it'll be interesting. But remember, for all of your late-breaking college football portal news, make sure to follow our portal page, CFB Transfers on Instagram, CFB Transfers on Twitter as well. All right, let's switch gears. One more college football story. By the way, quiet day in the chat. Everybody share what your thoughts are from the course of the weekend. Do want to wrap, though, with one more college football story. And this is a doozy, and it comes from the new college football hotbed, the center of the college football universe. Yeah, I'm talking about Chapel Hill, North Carolina, or as the locals are calling it, Chapel Bill, where obviously this is the conversation, right? Bill Belichick is the new head coach at North Carolina. I still, in so many ways, cannot believe it. But what's been interesting, listen, Bill Belichick got introduced on Thursday. The press conference was actually going on during our show. So Bill Belichick's on the job now. And what I find fascinating, we really haven't gotten very much news about his plans, his this, his that. The only 2 coaches that I'm aware of that we know, or staff members even, one, Mike Lombardi, who was a longtime player personnel guy that worked with Bill Belichick. He was working at VSiN, Vegas Sports Information Network. That is a radio network that does a lot of gambling stuff. He was working at VSiN. Mike Lombardi is leaving to be Bill Belichick's general manager to basically work with him on player evaluations. Also, Freddie Kitchens, who was in the NFL, was at North Carolina last year. He's actually the interim for the old Fenway Bowl against the UConn Huskies. Well, Freddie Kitchens will stay on staff, and really not much recruiting other than that. I saw that there was a 4-star prospect at quarterback that was committed, then he decommitted, and now he has recommitted to Bill Belichick. But otherwise, it's been pretty quiet out of Chapel Hill. But that said, we certainly got some interesting news via a name that I just mentioned, a guy by the name of Mike Lombardi. Okay, so I don't know Mike Lombardi. He's been in the media forever, but he also worked for Belichick, as I said, many years ago in a player personnel role, and now he's going with him to North Carolina. But I think because Mike Lombardi has been in the media, he has a lot of media contacts. We heard that Bill Belichick, by the way, is still going to do the Pat McAfee show. I don't know if Mike Lombardi is going to keep doing all of his media availabilities, but he did one on Friday, and it certainly caught the attention of Miami fans. Apparently, he went on Sirius XM radio with Chris Mad Dog Russo. Now, we have no audio. Obviously, Sirius doesn't really put out their audio available on any platform. It's a paid service, whatever. I get it. But apparently, Mike Lombardi kind of just threw Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes a stray. And I saw this via a Miami Hurricanes message board called Kane Insight. Producer Matt, do we have the quote available? So Mike Lombardi, the new North Carolina GM, was on Sirius XM, and this is what he had to say about how they plan on building that roster and really what his job is. He said the job will entail player evaluations, developing a grading system, building a team around what you want to become. That's so important, you know. In college, you have all these first-round picks. Well, you still got to build a team. I mean, Mario Cristobal has been wonderful in recruiting, but they haven't been able to get to the final 12. You got to build a full team. It's not about winning the recruiting battle. It's about making the team the best it can be. So for me, that's the job. Got nothing else to say other than how about Mario Cristobal just sitting around working the portal, working recruiting, and all of a sudden my guy's taking strays from the new North Carolina the new North Carolina GM, Mike Lombardi. I got a lot of thoughts. Again, that quote was via Kane Insight or Kane's Insight, the Miami message board. So first off, I got a lot of thoughts here. One, first of all, listen, I don't think that Mike Lombardi was intentionally taking shots. Doesn't mean that it doesn't come off right. And I do think it's a little bit unfair. First of all, this is the first year of the 12-team playoff. And I know that Miami didn't make it. And I know that Miami had a talented roster. I'm certain Miami had a very well compensated roster. It doesn't change the fact, like to say, oh, he's never made the 12-team playoff. Well, we just started this bad boy, okay? It's also worth noting, for as disappointing as the end of the season was, that was the best season that Miami football has had in 20 years, since they went to the 2003 Orange Bowl with Kellen Winslow and Sean Taylor and Antrell Roll and guys like that. This was the best season that Miami has had in forever. And so I don't think Mario Cristobal is the guy that you want to throw shots at. But two, let me say this. I understand that Miami is an easy punching bag right now. Entered November in position to make the college football playoff. I think basically could have lost 2 games. If they lost 1 game in the regular season, 1 game in the ACC championship game, they would have been in this playoff. But they lose twice as double-digit favorites. Now, Syracuse isn't terrible. Georgia Tech isn't terrible. They're an easy punching bag. But what I would say is, does Mike Lombardi, does Bill Belichick, do they have any idea how hard it is to actually put together a roster as good as Mario Cristobal did? Now, you can argue, could another coach get more out of it? Maybe. That's not the argument. The argument is how many guys could even put that roster together? You know how many recruiting battles you have to win to have a roster like Mario Cristobal's? I mean, Cam freaking Ward had declared for the NFL draft. Mario Cristobal had to out-recruit the NFL, had to convince Cam Ward that Miami was a better option for him in 2024 than the freaking NFL was. And I'll say this, I'll credit Mario Cristobal. He was right. Nobody was talking about Cam Ward as a first-round pick this past year. Now Cam Ward's going to be a first-round pick. Look at some of the other guys that they have on that roster. Now, you could argue, did they underachieve? Whatever. They went 10-2. And you don't want to lose the way that they did down the stretch. But think about that roster. Francis Mauioga, left tackle, 5-star, going to be probably a top 10 pick next year. Tyler Barron, defensive end. Damian Martinez, running back, so many great players out of the portal. And I just don't think anyone can fully appreciate how much work goes into building that roster. How many phone calls, how many conversations, how many text messages with agents, high school coaches, 7-on-7 people, and just understanding the landscape of college football. Who's happy at his school? Who's unhappy? Who feels like he needs to get paid more? Who feels like they're whatever? Who, think about just everything that goes into putting a roster together that good. Again, how many thousands of text messages and phone calls that staff put together, or how many phone calls and text messages that staff sent to put together that roster. I don't think anyone realizes how hard it is, let alone people that haven't been in college football. And by the way, it's not just recruiting the roster. How about keeping everybody in that locker room happy? And again, that's one thing. I just don't think Bill Belichick and his staff, if it's going to be a lot of NFL people, are fully ready for, unless they've lived it, right? The number of kids in that locker room that you have to constantly have a pulse on. Who's happy? Who's unhappy? Who feels like they should be getting more snaps? Who feels like they should be getting more money? Who's getting more snaps but less money than the guy they're starting over? These are things that major college football coaches have to deal with. And let me kind of wrap by also saying this. I think this is the part where, my other concern with Belichick, besides the fact of, just the re-recruiting of the players, in my opinion, is an underrated element of basically how hard it is to coach in college football in 2024. But here's the other concern that I have about Belichick and his staff, is that I think there's a little bit of institutional arrogance about what they've done in the past and how it's going to translate to college football. Again, we've talked about it, but how many guys have come from the pros and think, well, I'm just going to out-evaluate everybody, and I've put together a Super Bowl roster so I can put together a national championship roster. It ain't that easy. Ask Patrick Ewing at Georgetown. Ask Chris Mullen at St. John's. Ask Mike Woodson at Indiana. Ask Jerry Stackhouse at Vanderbilt. Jerry Stackhouse won like a G League title, was G League Coach of the Year, was a hot NBA candidate, comes to college basketball with this playbook this thick and thinks, I'm going to run this sport. And all of a sudden he realizes, oh, wait a second. Arkansas has more talent than me. Kentucky has more talent than me. Alabama has more. You go on and on down the list. And so, again, that's my thing with Belichick and Mike Lombardi. I'm not saying that they're not great X's and O's guys. That's such a small part of the job now, especially because, remember, there is a limit on how much time you can spend with your players. And so this idea, well, we've done this and we've evaluated it. It's like, that's great. You can't build a roster solely on evaluation, though. Everybody thinks that comes from, we're going to out-evaluate everybody. It's like, guess what? Evaluation's cool. You know what's cooler? Having dudes like Jeremiah Smith, having dudes like Ryan Williams, having dudes like CJ Stroud, whoever. It's like Ryan Day, I criticize him, but he's a great evaluator too. You know what he also has? Dudes that everybody can see. And so again, I think there's only so many 5 stars that you can, there's only so many 3 stars that you can turn into NFL draft prospects. You can't have a roster full of those guys. It just doesn't work. And so I have my doubts. I'm not rooting against Bill Belichick. And by the way, let me also say this really quick before we get to some college hoops, because the show's already going long. But I just sit there and I look at what is going on with North Carolina. And again, I said it a second ago. Bill Belichick, he's saying all the right things. We're going to be more media friendly. I'm going to go on McAfee, this, that, the other thing. Well, here's my big question, is sometimes being media friendly isn't good. There's a reason that Nick Saban never let his assistant coaches do media. It's because you put your foot in your mouth just like this. Didn't love the comments from Mike Lombardi. Don't think it was intentional. Don't think it changes the fact, though, that Miami now has a major chip on their shoulder if they have North Carolina on the schedule next year. That's what I'm going to do. Take a quick break, come back. When we come back, we got to talk about SEC basketball. Insane stat. This league might be the best league that we have ever seen in the history of college basketball. It sounds crazy. I'll explain next. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Deion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Do want to go ahead and switch gears to some college football. Interesting, or to some college basketball. By the way, shout out to the guy that in the chat that said, if you think Travis Hunter is the best player in college football, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, who's better? Name me the better player. Just name me the better. Name me the player that could do what Travis Hunter did this year on both sides of the football. Yeah, it doesn't exist. With that said, do want to go ahead and switch gears and do want to talk a little college hoops. And we're going to get to some of the big results from over the course of the weekend in a minute. Gonzaga beats UConn, Tennessee at the buzzer, Kentucky over Louisville, etc. But what I want to start with is this. I want to start with a hyperbolic statement that sounds crazy, but I don't think it is. And it really struck me watching college hoops on Saturday. Okay, so college hoops on Saturday was awesome. First big Saturday. And you start to look at the results of the games. Texas A&M goes to Indianapolis and beats Purdue really start to finish. Tennessee, yes, they're number one in the country, but winning at Illinois, good luck. I don't know how many Big Ten teams are going to do that. Tennessee does win. Kentucky smacks Louisville at home. You go on down the list. Auburn destroys Ohio State. And after the Texas A&M win and after the day in general, I saw a stat that blew my mind. We'll save the stat for later, producer Matt. It'll be our little secret until then. But I bring it up because is the SEC, I was thinking about this, and I think we now have the stats to sort of back it up. I don't think it's hyperbole to say SEC basketball is trending to be potentially the greatest college basketball conference we have ever seen. It sounds crazy, but let me dive in and let me explain why I think there might be something to it, okay? So first of all, I'll get to our secret stat in a minute, okay? Because I think it really kind of hammers home, oh, we're seeing something historic. But just look at what the SEC has done so far, okay? First of all, top 25 right now going into Monday. Now, we put out a new AP top 25 on Monday. Things could change. But as of right now, the SEC has 9 teams currently ranked in the top 25. I am not great at math, but that's about, 40% or so? That's right around 40%. And you look at the teams that are ranked, right? You look at the fact that we have Tennessee ranked number 1, Auburn ranked number 2, Kentucky ranked number 5, Alabama ranked number 7, Florida ranked number 9. We have Texas A&M at number 17. We have Ole Miss at number 19. We have Mississippi State at number 25. And so just think about what I said. 2 best teams in college basketball. Tennessee, undefeated, number 1 in the country. Auburn is probably the best team that I have seen personally so far. You have Alabama, which was a preseason Final Four darling coming off last year. You have Kentucky, which might be the biggest surprise in college basketball. You have, by the way, Florida, which I think has to be the most under-discussed team in all of college basketball right now. They're sitting here quietly heading into this week. They actually play North Carolina on Tuesday. Florida is sitting there 10-0 with some really good wins. Beat Wake Forest on a neutral, beat Wichita State on a neutral, beat Virginia on a neutral, et cetera, et cetera. So you have teams like that. Then you have teams that we don't even talk about and results that we don't even talk about. Missouri just beat Kansas like a week ago. Nobody's talking about Missouri. You know Missouri basketball. Again, this is a team in the SEC that nobody is talking about. They are currently sitting there at 9-1. Their only loss was on opening night against Memphis at Memphis. Memphis is awesome. Memphis is like 10-2 and in the top 25. Oh, by the way, we mentioned Ole Miss sitting there at 9-1, their only loss at the buzzer to Purdue. Mississippi State, quietly the quietest 9-1 team in America. Their only loss was to Butler on a neutral, okay? So you go on and on down. By the way, you know Vandy is 9-1. You know, by the way, how about this? Arkansas, this team that we all deem, or I don't personally, but a lot of people like, oh, they're overrated. They're not good. Arkansas is quietly 9-2. Their only losses to Baylor on a neutral and also to Illinois on a neutral. Just beat a top 25 team in Michigan on a neutral in a game that, they fell down early, but they were kind of in control there for about 30 minutes there to close the game. So I bring it up because Arkansas is one of the more teams that people believe is overrated. And they're rolling. They're 9-2 after a couple nice wins. LSU, by the way, took its second loss of the season on Saturday to SMU. So these are the bad teams that we're talking about. The good teams, of course, again, are national title contenders in Auburn and Tennessee. But at the same time, just, raw rankings don't really show it. By the way, Texas A&M, as I just said, beat Purdue on a neutral in Indianapolis, a couple miles from campus. I don't know how many miles from West Lafayette it is, but it's not far. So the wins are incredible. The rankings are incredible. By the way, what was the final tally of the SEC ACC Challenge? 14-2. We probably should have talked about this then. But here was the stat that I saw that really crystallized to me. Oh my goodness, we are seeing something absolutely historic. Producer Matt, pop up the stat. This is from Jared Burson. Jared Burson, I believe, I could be mistaken, basically invented the algorithm that ESPN uses for ESPN stats and info. I don't know if that's true. I've heard it. Shout out to Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander on CBS Sports. They talk about Jared Burson all the time. Don't know if it's true, but the guy knows college hoops, Jared Burson, and he puts out a lot of stats about college hoops, whatever. But this stat was jaw-dropping to me. Jared Burson said, quote, Texas A&M, who beat Purdue in Indianapolis. Purdue was ranked number 11 at the time. That brings the SEC to 17-8 in non-conference games against AP top 25 teams. That's 4 more regular season games out of conference wins than any league has ever had against top 25 competition out of conference, and there's still more opportunities to come. So let me rephrase that because I didn't even read the tweet right. The SEC has 17 non-conference wins against top 25 teams. That is 4 more than any league has ever had. That is insane. By the way, I didn't even mention Oklahoma. Oklahoma goes to the Bahamas and beats everybody, and they're sitting at 10-0 as well. So I think Oklahoma's in the top 25. I somehow missed them. The point I'm trying to make, 17 wins against ranked teams in the out of conference with more to come. It is insane. We've never seen anything like it. And I think there's a couple of reasons why, and I don't think it's slowing down. First of all, I've probably mentioned this on the show before, but you know who really deserves a lot of credit for this? Mike Slive, the former SEC commissioner. This story is kind of famous, but I think it's worth noting because I think we got to this point about 4 or 5 years ago where you could see this coming. By the way, go find it on Twitter. I called it the SEC basketball revolution because about 6-7 years ago, you could see these things, the mechanisms slowly behind the scenes working. Remember the year South Carolina made a Final Four, Auburn's made a Final Four, Tennessee's been number 1 in the country, etc. But the story goes that Mike Slive had a meeting of the SEC coaches when the SEC network launched. And he basically sat there, and it was actually not the coaches, it was the school presidents, and it was the ADs. And he basically said, we're starting this network. Football ends in December. And oh, by the way, football is a 1-day-a-week sport. You all are going to have more money than you know what to do with, and you need to invest it in basketball because basketball is going to be an important property for this league because we have inventory to fill in December, January, February, and March. We have inventory to fill Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday when it's not football season. And so the leagues invested in their basketball teams, and you could see some immediately and some took a little bit longer. Bruce Pearl at Auburn, you could see, boom, immediately. It's like, oh, that guy's awesome. And within 3 or 4 years, Auburn went from one of the worst teams in major conference basketball to a Final Four in 2019. And the year before, remember, they won the SEC. You had Rick Barnes going to Tennessee. Didn't feel sexy at the time, but it was obviously a great hire, right? You have, even at the time, like it didn't work out. But remember when Alabama hired Avery Johnson? It didn't work out, but they paid a lot of money. They were like, we're going to pay our basketball coach a lot of money. Let's see if this is the guy. And then as time goes on, Eric Musselman at Arkansas, Nate Oates at Alabama, Dennis Gates at Missouri, who I think is going to be really good, made the tournament in year one a few years ago. Florida with Todd Golden, Texas A&M with Buzz Williams, I think is a great example. And so I just bring it up because that was the first factor. Mike Slive going to his school presidents and his ADs and saying, you all need to invest in basketball. I will also say, I do think NIL has really helped as well. Listen, we all know in the SEC, it just means more, but listen, I'm the guy that does the portal rankings all April, all May, and I'm stunned at the number of players, really good players in the portal that ended up in the SEC, and not just at Kentucky, not just at Arkansas, not just at Tennessee. You look at Missouri. Remember, Mark Mitchell, former McDonald's All-American, decides to go, was at Duke for 2 years, was really good at Duke, by the way, goes to Missouri. He's averaging 13 points, 5 boards per game. That's just one example. Ole Miss, I think I think Ole Miss is legit, like top 12, top 15 team in college basketball. Okay. They've added a couple really nice pieces to go along with Jamin Brakefield and Matt Morrell and the guys that are back this season. Vandy has clearly invested in NIL. Texas, they're playing well at 9-2, but they've invested in NIL. And so I think NIL is a factor. I think it's a cross-the-board commitment by the folks in the SEC, and we got to give them credit, and I don't think it's slowing down. I don't think these leagues are going to stop committing money and investing into college basketball, and I think we are seeing something historic. Listen, I don't have all the details, all the whatever, but we know I believe the tournament record is 11 NCAA tournament teams from one league. The Big East back in 2011 when UConn won the national championship had 11. I think the Big Ten might have gotten around 11 at one point. You look at the SEC. Again, Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn, Florida, Georgia's 9-1. Now, they'll fall apart because Mike White's their coach and he's terrible. But the point I'm trying to make is that it is going to be incredible to watch this league. And yes, I absolutely positively believe that we are looking at one of the best conferences we have ever seen. Again, 17 wins is 4 more in the out-of-conference against ranked teams than we've ever seen in college basketball. Really quickly, because we're already at the hour mark of this show, I'm running out of voice. And we got a college football playoff to preview later this week, so Torres needs his voice. Let's talk about, let's go ahead and talk about we'll do some very, very quick reaction to the Saturday slate. It was awesome. First game I want to hit on, UConn Gonzaga. Okay. Madison Square Garden, Saturday night. As I said, I wanted to be in New York for this game. Couldn't be. Had friends that were there, was texting with them, were DMing with them. UConn gets the win. Final score, 77-71. And let me just say this. Talks of UConn's demise have been greatly exaggerated. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into this one just really quickly. First of all, the big story, Liam McNeely. This was a kid we talked about during portal season. He obviously isn't a transfer, but he reopened his recruitment in April, in March, whenever it was. We did 3 or 4 updates. There's a reason why. Kid is a baller. Kid is a gamer. 26 points in this game. And really, UConn needed him. Alex Karaban, 3 of 10 from the field. Samson Johnson goes out with a concussion early in the game. And they needed Liam McNeely to step up. He was great. This team was great. And let me just say this. I tweeted it out, and I truly believe it. I believe that 3-game losing streak in Maui was not only the best thing that happened to this program, but I believe the national narrative, everybody pretending to freak out, oh my God, Dan Hurley yells at the refs. He's the worst person ever. He screamed. He raised his voice. Well, guess what? I believe it motivated this team. Here's what I tweeted out, because since returning to Maui, UConn is 4-0. Win over number 18 Baylor, win at Texas, win over number 8 Gonzaga. And this is what I said. Truthfully, all that fake outrage Dan Hurley narrative did was give this program the chip on the shoulder that they needed. Congrats, college hoops. You awoke a monster. And I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that this team, I think they were feeling themselves a little bit. I said it on Friday's preview. I said, look, this is a program. There's a lot of players that haven't contributed to a high level of success at UConn. But I think you get in that ecosystem, oh, we're back-to-back national champs. Like, no, you didn't do anything. And so I think they needed to be humbled. I think the coaching staff needed to be humbled. They don't have all the answers. But They came back from Maui. They went back to the lab. They figured out the two big system that works so well. Hopefully Samson Johnson isn't out an extended period of time because UConn opens Big East play later this week against Xavier. But I just bring it up because this was the win that UConn needed. And I think the 3-game losing streak in Maui, but also not just the 3-game losing streak, but the national narrative that Dan Hurley was out of control. I think it was the kick in the butt the Huskies needed. Huskies get the win. Really quickly, Gonzaga side of things, I touched on this a little bit. First of all, Caleb Battle was awesome in this game, 21 points. Ryan Nembhard, 16 points. But I bring it up because we talked about this on Friday's show. I do wonder if we all overrated Gonzaga a little bit. Gonzaga, basically, if you go back and look, Gonzaga opens the season. They destroyed Baylor in what was basically a home game. It was technically neutral because it was in Spokane, but it wasn't at the home arena, whatever. But I just bring it up because I think we all just vehemently overrated Gonzaga after that game. Since that game, Gonzaga is a respectable 6-3, but they lost to UConn on a neutral. They lost to Kentucky on a neutral. They lost to West Virginia on a neutral. Their best win, probably Indiana, which is struggling, maybe Arizona State. And so I think it'll be interesting. The good news for Gonzaga, they really have one more game to kind of get right before league play. They face UCLA 2 Saturdays from now. It's actually at the Inuit Dome, the new Clippers arena. I would love to go. Unfortunately, I do radio on Saturdays. But I just bring it up. I don't know if I think Gonzaga's good. I don't know if they're as good as we all, and I include myself. You go back and listen to the show that we did the day after the opening night. I don't know if they're quite as good as everybody made them out to be. So I just bring it up because Gonzaga gets the loss second in a row. First time since, I believe, December 2018 that Gonzaga has lost back-to-back games. Not ideal. Really quickly, Kentucky-Louisville. We did a long-form reaction immediately after the game. Story in this one, Lamont Butler. Fred of the Aaron Torres pod, Lamont Butler, 33 points, 10 for 10 from the field, 6 for 6 from behind the three-point line. Yeah, that's freaking incredible. Okay, so Lamont, we talked about it on the reaction. If you missed it, go back and check it out. Listen, I told you during portal season, I said, look, listen, this kid has been pegged as a defensive stopper, as whatever. He's got offense in his repertoire. He was just never asked to do that at San Diego State. That is the San Diego State history. Guys go other places and you realize there's more to their game than they showed at San Diego State. It's not a knock, by the way. San Diego State went to the Final Four in 23. They went to the Sweet 16 last year. But it is a reality, and I said Lamont Butler had more to his game. So he's coming off an ankle injury. He comes back, 33 points. As I said, 10 of 10 shooting. By the way, ties for the third highest mark in terms of most shots made in a game without a miss. I believe he tied Justin Edwards from last year, which is kind of crazy because poor Justin Edwards, it never really clicked for him at Kentucky. But Kentucky gets the win. Again, there's a full reaction on the YouTube channel. I'll just say Louisville. I thought Louisville was actually impressive. And, I know it's a big rivalry, and I know I'm not supposed to. Whatever. Here's the truth. Louisville is down to 8 scholarship players that are healthy right now. Okay, several players out for the year, including Kayshawn Pryor, who was a difference maker. Not a big guy traditionally, but he's a low post player, okay? But he goes down. They have 8 scholarship players in this game. Terrence Edwards gets hurt, gets in foul trouble early. James Scott gets in foul trouble early. Chucky Hepburn basically carried them the whole game. It's crazy that they were even in it. I thought they fought their butts off. I think Pat Kelsey is doing great things with this program. Hopefully they can get healthy. Hopefully they can do enough to get into a tournament in year one, because I think he is a great coach. I think Louisville has great upside. Just needed to get the win. Just couldn't get the win here. Really quickly, Arizona, UCLA. UCLA comes back down from 13 points in the second half to get the win. I'll say this, man, Mick Cronin's a beast, dude. Like, he really is. They had the bad year last year where they lost the entire team. They tried to go international. If you know Mick Cronin, he's not going to deal with softness. He's not going to deal with whatever. If you don't come with your hard hat every single day, you're just not going to last. And clearly, he upgraded in the portal. It worked out really well. Tyler Bilodeau, 17 points. Sky Clark, 15 points. Those are 2 transfers, but that looked like a Mick Cronin UCLA team. They were just mean. They were tough, but they were resilient as well. And the cool thing was they did it without Eric Daly, one of their best players, who was out for most of the game with foul trouble. Arizona Probably a bigger picture to have conversation to have with Arizona. They're not very good this year. 4-5, lost at Wisconsin. Okay, you excuse that one. Then they lose to Duke at home, and you start to say, "Whoa, I don't know." Not that Duke's bad, but you were at home. Then you go to the Bahamas and struggle. I said it that I don't think they're a tournament team. And I think, there's a couple kind of big picture, small picture things. The big picture is some of their players have regressed. KJ Lewis was a guy that I thought would be like an All-American type player. He has not taken the leap that we thought. Caleb Love has definitely regressed. But I think it's a depth issue. I said this on Twitter the other day. Arizona last year, I still will go to my grave. I believe they were as built as well as anybody to deal with UConn, and it obviously doesn't happen. They lose in the Sweet 16. But I bring it up because go back and look at last year. Remember that roster? Keyshawn Johnson, Pella Larson, Caleb Love, obviously, Kylan Boswell, et cetera, Umar Ballo. But what was important with Arizona? Their 6, 7, 8 guy, Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, and Crevis. Those three guys could have started for virtually any team in the country. They were coming off the bench. I watched this Arizona team this year. They have no bench. And two of their star players have regressed. That's a problem. Crevis is hurt as well. That's a big problem. And so you look at this team, outside of Jaden Bradley, I don't know what I'm getting any game, any moment, any time of day. I just have no idea. Again, we'll do a bigger picture thing on Arizona at some point. I don't think they're very good. I think they're going to struggle in Big 12 play. I just don't think they have enough guys. Really quickly, I'm just going to be about 30 seconds on each of these, producer Matt. Tennessee, buzzer-beating win. Jordan Gainey, incredible. Tough game to watch, though. It was a tough game to watch. Let me pull up the stats here to make sure that I have this right, because I pulled up the foul stats in this game. 45 total fouls, 64 free throw attempts. Great win for Tennessee. Listen, it's an incredible win. I'm just not going to break it down and pretend like there's a big picture takeaway when there were 64 foul shots. But if you go to Illinois and win, you're a real team. Credit to the Vols for getting the win. And finally, I got to give producer Matt's Auburn Tigers credit. They go on the road, get the victory, it was a neutral site in Atlanta against Ohio State. Janai Broome, 25 points, 20 boards. I saw a stat, what was it? First 25-point, 20 rebound, 5 assists, no turnover game in like 50 years or 100 years, or it's never been done. Janai Broome is your favorite for National Player of the Year. All right, I'll tell you what, I got to get the heck out of here. We are well over an hour of just great content. And I need you all to do me a favor. If you are not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, do me a favor. Please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcast. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. It is time for me to get out of here. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. I hear things are not going well for you, my brother. Good luck. I think you'll be back in the podcast space soon.